of the supreme deity. Apuleius describes it as a small vase skillfully hollowed out on a perfectly rounded base, with remarkable Egyptian figures fashioned on its outer surface. It had not a high neck, but it projected into a long spout extending into a beak. On the other side was a handle set well back in a broad curve, and above it was an asp, coiled in a knot, the striped swelling of its scaly neck rearing high. This may be the asp on the far right, coiled around the priestess's hand, or it may be just very small, kind of in a little knot, popping out of the top there. It's kind of hard to tell. And then again, this might be a better depiction of the vase on the far right. Pretty peculiar instrument. One of the most conspicuous acts of purity, going back to the procession, was the shaving of the head. As you can see, the men in this procession have shaved heads. And the same thing happens to Lucius at the end of Book 11. In fact, the very last sentence of the entire novel reads, "I did not cover or conceal my bald head, but sported it openly wherever I went." This is significant since it was seen as a kind of a sign of poverty and humiliation to have a shaved head. Here's another Egyptian priest, complete with a shorn head and a simple linen robe, a symbol of austerity and purity. Lucius will be dressed in the same robe at the beginning of his initiation, and these were white. And just for fun, another bald Egyptian priest. Now going back to the Isis procession, a few more things are noted in the Golden Ass. The rattle the furthest priest on the left is carrying is mentioned in the text. Lucius describes bronze, silver, and gold rattles, and these are known as sistrums. And these were sacred instruments related to ancient festivals and dance. They were used in worship and helped produce music. And the most common images of Isis, like this first statue, usually incorporate the sistrum into it. A number of these ancient sistrums have been discovered. This is just one of them in the upper right. And this is actually clearly Egyptian, no Greek or Roman influence. You can see all the way back here, you can probably tell who that is, but she's also carrying a sistrum. Now going back to the procession again, we're going to look at the priestess on the far right. She holds out her left hand with the serpent coiled around it. Now Apuleius mentions that the priests and priestesses, some of them had their left hand extended out with their fingers extended. He said, I completely lost where I am. He mentions the significance of the left hand with palm outstretched, symbolizing justice. Since it was impaired by nature and endowed with no guile or cunning, it was thought more suited to represent justice. So whereas the right hand, the symbol of dexterity in the ancient world, was also a symbol of cunning, and like he says, guile, the left hand, which had little dexterity, is a symbol of justice. This is probably clearly a Greek or Roman influence. Now he continues, she also carried a small golden vessel, round like a woman's breast, from which she poured libations of milk. That's what she's holding in the right hand. Now more commonly, this is thought to hold water for sprinkling. Libations of milk may be Greco-Roman influence. Now the priest on the left here, in his left hand, probably holds the same vessel. Every day the statue in the telesterion in the Holy of Holies of the temple was sprinkled with water. It was a means of purification. And this is mirrored to some degree in the Assyrian depictions of the sacred tree, which is also purified by sprinkling, as can be seen here. I know it's kind of difficult to see, but these gods, this would be that little vessel that held the water. And what they have are little cones. We're not sure exactly what they are, pine cones or some other kind of cone that they dip in the bucket and then shake the water and sprinkle the tree. So whereas Apuleius has Isis in the center of her temple, it's thought that in ancient Assyria they had the ancient tree of life. Now we're going to move on to the actual initiation. Yay. We know Isis initiations took place in temples scattered all over the ancient world. One of the other cults that is thought to share many similarities with that of Isis is the cult of Mithras. Their initiation was usually performed in a cave underground. This is a Mithraeum. The statue in the center, that would be the telesterion, shows Mithras about to sacrifice a bull whose blood was the life-giving force for the plants and animals for their society. Isis temples, which are called Iseums, most likely represented architectural embodiments of these caverns. Here we have a photo of the underground Mithraeum. Initiates were required to offer elaborate and expensive sacrifices as part of the ritual, usually a full-grown bull, which was also the case with Isis cults, although probably not a bull, probably other animals were involved. Lucius even has to sell most of what he owns, up to all but a couple pieces of his clothing, just to afford to be initiated into the mysteries. This is an above-ground version of a Mithraeum, where the statue would have been right before those three altar-looking things in the front. And this is the Iseum found at Pompeii. You'll note the water basin on the right, which is where the priests would sprinkle or purify everybody. And something that I noticed when I was looking at this that doesn't exist anymore is what appears to be a four-horned altar on the left here, which was right before the stairs leading up to the temple. You even have a little stand for the priest to stand on, and which obviously shares pretty significant similarities with Judaism. The thing is, this is a modern-day picture. The horns are gone. It looks like most of that altar has been worn down to just about nothing. You can see some of the remains of the horns, which would have covered the altar. So I don't know the significance of that, but I did notice that in that photograph, and I think I'll look further into that later on. Another ancient depiction of an Iseum shows priests officiating outside the temple. Porphyry describes the significance of the cave to worshippers of Mithras as follows. Thus, also the Persians, mystically signifying the descent of the soul into the sublunary regions and its regression from it, initiate the mystic in a place which they denominate a cavern. For as Eubulus says, Zoroaster was the first who consecrated in the neighboring mountains of Persia a spontaneously produced cave in honor of Mithra, the maker and father of all things. A cave, according to Zoroaster, bearing a resemblance of the world which was fabricated by Mithra. Thus the cave serves not only as a link to the underworld, but as a microcosm, and the associated rites guaranteed the perpetuity of the ordered nature of the universe. During the ceremony, which usually occurs overnight, the initiate moves from the opening of the cave toward the center, usually called the telesterion, from the Greek word teleoo, which means to make perfect, and later to initiate. For the sake of clarity, there's no connection here to the word telestial, in case anyone was wondering. The Greek word for to die is teleutao. The correlation between initiation and death is not accidental. Apuleius even explains the act of initiation was performed as a rite of voluntary death. Plutarch explains the same thing in On the Soul. Then, at the point of death, the soul suffers something like those who participate in the great initiations. Hence, the word dying is like the word to be initiated, and the act of dying is like the act of being initiated. First of all, there are wanderings and wearisome rushings about, and certain journeys, fearful and unending, through the night. Here, Plutarch most likely refers to the practice at Eleusis, the place of the original mystery cult, of blindfolding the initiate before leading them on a lengthy journey through the darkness. The same practice most likely took place in Iseums, since part of the original Isis mythology, or at least one of the original versions, of which there are many, concerns her wandering in search of her dead brother-husband. Some scholars believe the Greek word for initiate, moustes, from which we derive mystic and mystery, is also related to the Greek word muo, which means to close, usually referring to the eyes or lips. Whether or not that's the case, the beginning of the initiation symbolized advancing toward death. This is Apuleius' trotting the threshold of Proserpina, the queen of Hades. Lactantius, an early Christian, in a book, Divine Institutions, describes the process as seeking Proserpina with lit torches through the night. Back to Plutarch. But then one encounters an extraordinary light, and pure regions and meadows offer welcome, with voices and dances and majesties of sacred sounds and holy sights. in which now the completely initiated one, becoming free and set loose, enjoys the right, crowned, and consorts with holy and pure men. Apuleius explains